Sometimes dog training can really go south, especially when it hinders the dog to de-escalate when things get too close or too tricky, and that leads to a very explosive dog who shows aggression pretty fast. In today's episode of A Dog's Soul, an Empath's Guide to Your Dog's Feelings, I will introduce you to Ty, a Belgian Malinois who was really well trained in obedience, and that actually caused a real aggression issue. So stay tuned and have fun. Alright, so Ty is a Belgian Malinois. He is 5 years old, and his first sign of aggression, or his first display of aggressive behavior towards a human, was on the day his mom got him with 12 weeks old. So let that sink in for a moment. 12-week-old puppy showed aggression in the form of snapping towards a human being. And it was in a situation where Ty couldn't walk away. It was in a very narrow hallway, and the person reached toward his face, and Ty reacted with snapping at the person. He did growl first, but it was like a split second. It was really, really fast, and of course nothing happened, right? But his mom as well as the woman were startled because it's a puppy, right? I mean, most puppies would just endure it or show signs of discomfort, but they wouldn't lash out, right? So that was the first sign that Ty was a dog who would slip into aggression easily. And it also told his mom that he was no dog that just could be petted by any stranger coming up to him, even if he is really, really cute. And he was a very cute puppy, a very beautiful puppy. But she was a very responsible owner. She is a really responsible owner, and she didn't want him to practice aggression. She didn't want him to be in those situations. She didn't want him to feel uncomfortable, right? So she introduced new people rarely and in a very careful way. And everybody Ty met growing up in that careful way of hers was fine. He was fine with those people. He was really friendly with them, and he would play with them. He would let them pet him, and everything was fine with them. And since Ty's mom had an affinity for dog sports, and she actually got a working dog breed because she wanted to engage in dog sports like frisbee and agility and obedience and all those things. She did not want to do any bite work with him because she said that she knew what kind of dog she had and that she didn't feel very good about that. And I agree with her. I am not a big fan of bite work, but that's not the topic right now. She trained Ty in obedience, so he had really strong heel with eye contact with her and all the things you need in obedience class. And again, I'm not a big fan of dog sports. It's fascinating, but it's not my approach to dog training. So we were coming from different angles, right? But usually it's not a bad thing if the dog knows obedience, right? The tricky part is when the dog is trying to stay in an obedience heel, so very close and with his eye contact on the handler and ignoring everything around him until it's too late. And that was what happened to Ty, and it's not the first working dog I've seen this. So let's just dive into what's happening. Whenever strangers approached Ty and his mom, he was really close to her and in a heel command. So, what he tried to do was he tried to behave and endure whatever was happening until it was really, really, really close. So, the person, for example, came really close, and that was when he could no longer endure the situation. It was just too much, and that's when he lashed out extremely. Since he was in that command, and a very strict command, he could not display a lot of de-escalation, and he also had never learned to do that. So it was a split second. He went from being in the command and having eye contact with his mom to turning around and biting down on another person. That actually happened, unfortunately, and that brought a lot of inconveniences and a lot of heartache and a lot of stress on all people involved, right? Nothing happened to the person he bit. It was just a ripped jacket. But still, that person got really startled, which is understandable, right? His mom got really startled because she wouldn't have expected him to actually bite down on somebody. And he also got startled by the whole thing, right? Because it's scary for everybody. And the most worrying part of all of this was that now he had bitten a human. He had made the experience that biting a human actually gets him relief when things get too tricky. And that is a very dangerous situation because it teaches him that he cannot get out of a situation any other way than biting. And this is a dangerous thing for a dog to learn, right? We don't want that under any circumstances. But it happened, right? So we had to start introducing people at a really great distance and without him falling into his default, the heel position. Because as soon as he was in the heel position, he tried to do the same thing. He tried to ignore everything in his surroundings and not interact with whatever is coming towards him until it was too close again, right? So this was also something that kept his mom from actually seeing when things became too tricky for him because he didn't show anything, right? He tensed up. Yes, his body got more tense and he took rewards faster and more snappily. So that was an indication that things got too close, but he could not handle them himself. So it was always dangerous. It was always a possibility that he would fall back to aggression again. So he had to learn a lot of different skills to actually be able to act differently and have a repertoire on things he could do to get out of a situation, to de-escalate a situation, to just stop an interaction in a friendly way. And that was the really, really tricky part, right? Usually when I see dogs like this, they have been trained with pressure and force and things like that. For him, that was not the case. He was trained in a very nice way, and it made no difference. There was no difference between the forcefully trained and him, who was nicely trained, when it came to his default. Because for the forcefully trained dogs, it was always like, I'm going in this position because in this position I can avoid punishment. For him, it was, I go into this position because in this position I get rewarded. It's a different motivation, but both of them are strong. So the position is strong. And what we need with such a dog is to build up something else so that it becomes as strong as the position he was in first. So it can be anything, right? It can be anything that is de-escalating and that resolves the situation. Like, it can be just walking away. And this is actually my favorite thing to do because I want the dogs to know that they can just leave a situation. They don't have to endure anything. I mean, yes, there are situations where they have to endure stuff, right? The vet, for example, sometimes. But that can be trained in a different setting. It can be trained in a different routine or a different situation. It's completely different from meeting people on the street. And to be honest, if you're living in a city and sometimes there are narrow paths and people come from behind, or there is a jogger just popping up suddenly, and that happens, right? Sometimes, especially when it's windy out and you have like your hoodie up or something like that, so you don't see as much and you don't hear as much as if it's just quiet in summertime. A jogger can just approach. Same with a bike. So, yes, sometimes people come up very stealthily, and that's when a dog, and to be honest, we as well, get startled. And we want the dog to fall back to moving away from the person and not biting into the person, right? That will be a way better solution. So we need to make walking away really, really rewarding. And that is just what we did. We introduced him to a new strategy, and the new strategy was walk away. Whenever you see a person, walk away. At first, we didn't make any difference between persons who might look more dangerous to him or persons who was easier. We just taught him that whenever you see a person, walk away. And at first, we needed a little bit of distance, but that became less and less and less since he learned really quickly. He was a very quick study, which is typical for the working breeds, right? Or those kinds of working breeds. There are different kinds of working breeds who haven't been bred to work with humans, but like the shepherds and those breeds who are used in the police, for example, those are bred to work very closely with humans, and that's why they learn things that are done with their handlers pretty quickly. But since, of course, his mom trusted him no longer, it's understandable, right? Because Ty had bitten somebody, even if nothing happened, but she didn't trust him around humans anymore. So what we also did was we introduced a cue that he could hold whenever things got very close that was incompatible to biting. And that was holding a nose target. He would target either his mom's leg or her hand and keep that hold. And while he's holding that, he cannot bite, right? Because his nose is fixated. And that's what gave them a new sense of security and a little bit of trust back. The same thing goes for the muzzle. Yes, it's inconvenient for a dog to wear a muzzle all the time, but to be honest, if there are trust issues and just trust issues, because there was a biting incident and every dog could fall back to what has already worked, even if we train different strategies. So Ty had to wear a muzzle because of the bite incident, and it also gave his mom a sense of security. So that is another very important thing. Yes, there are a lot of bias towards muzzles, and some of them are justified, but if we are dealing with a dog who would instantly bite somebody without warning, without hesitation. We need to be safe and we need to keep our fellow humans safe. That's important, right? And we are keeping the dog safe as well, because too many bite incidents and the dog's life will change quite a bit. And in our country, it would mean shelter for him and probably never getting out again. In other countries, it would mean getting euthanized. So, what I think is an important lesson from cases like this is that obedience can be a fun hobby, but we should be really careful with distracting our dogs from the environment in any kind of way, especially when it comes to dogs who have issues with the environment. Training can always include the dog interacting with the surroundings and at least noticing what's going on around him and choosing what to do early enough so that people not just run into him and then he has to make a quick decision. Tell me in the comments if you are doing any kind of dog sport. I would love to know. And if you have any questions or if you want any kind of topic brought up in the show, let me know. And we'll see each other next time. Bye.